A frantic scene Friday night outside a Fall River bar. Video from witnesses shows fists flying, with one man swinging what appears to be a helmet in a chaotic brawl. In the end, police say a 39-year-old man from Oak Bluffs was shot and killed, with 2 others.
For decades, the Hells Angels ruled the biker world. Untouchable, unstoppable. But what if I told you there's one enemy they actually fear? Deadly shootouts, brutal turf wars, and a rivalry that spilled blood across continents. Today, we're revealing the one force that came closest to breaking the Hells Angels' iron grip. Stay locked in. You're about to find out what even legends are afraid of.
A massive bomb explodes in the midst of a city. A message from the vicious motorcycle gang, the Outlaws.
It was a methodical campaign against the people they thought had come into their territory.
One of the Hells Angels' most feared enemies has been the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. The roots of their conflict stretch back to the 1970s, when the Hells Angels started expanding into Canada. The Outlaws saw this as a direct threat to their own power and control, and they weren't about to sit back and let the Angels take over. This kicked off a bitter rivalry that was marked by bombings, shootings, and brutal attacks.
They did whatever they pleased, and they were completely out of control.
The Outlaw motto is God forgives, outlaws don't.
The Outlaws retaliated fiercely, but despite their efforts, the Hells Angels ultimately managed to solidify their hold on Quebec. The war between these two clubs didn't just end after a few clashes. It was a full-scale campaign that caused chaos in the biker world for years. By the 1980s, the Outlaws had been driven out of Quebec, but the battle had left a lasting impression. Even though the Hells Angels won, the Outlaws' violent resistance became part of biker lore and a reminder of the cost of challenging the Angels' reign.
The Mongols, a renowned global motorcycle club, challenged the notorious Hells Angels on their own soil in Hamburg, which caused shockwaves to be transmitted throughout the criminal underworld.
Then there's the Mongols Motorcycle Club, a group that made its mark as one of the most dangerous threats to the Hells Angels' territory. Their conflict really ignited when the Mongols started expanding rapidly into areas traditionally dominated by the Angels, particularly in California. This sparked one of the bloodiest and most intense biker feuds in history. Both clubs fueled the war with relentless drive-bys, shootouts, and ambushes. And it wasn't long before the rivalry reached its peak during the infamous Laughlin River Run riot.
Guy, and I said, you know what? I go, F you. I go, come get some of this. And I rushed him. So as I took off rushing the guy, his eyes lit up and he took off, and he took off in the opposite direction, but there was a guy behind him, size of a bull, came at me. So he sidestepped, the guy behind him came at me, and we hit like two pit bulls, chest to chest, and hit the ground.
In 2002, a seemingly routine gathering in Nevada turned into a bloodbath, where members from both clubs were involved in a deadly shootout. 3 Mongols and 1 Hells Angels member lost their lives. The violence didn't stop there either. The Mongols grew stronger with each confrontation, and their defiance in the face of the Hells Angels made them a true nemesis. While the Angels dominated much of the West Coast, the Mongols' rise in power made it clear that the Hells Angels could no longer take their supremacy for granted. Even now, the Mongols remain one of the Hells Angels' most dangerous enemies, continuing to challenge their influence in the criminal underworld.
Bombs are kind of the outlaw signature. That's what they've been known to do in the past, and it's definitely what they were doing at that time.
The wars between the Hells Angels and these rival clubs show just how far the Angels are willing to go to maintain their dominance. While other clubs have either folded under pressure or been absorbed, the Outlaws and Mongols have proven time and time again that they are not easy to defeat. These clubs didn't just fight back, they made the Hells Angels bleed. The question now remains, with rivals like these, who can ever truly take down the Hells Angels? Or will they continue to reign supreme in the world of outlaw bikers?
They are the pagans, and their motto is do unto others, then split.
Absolutely, positively.
The Pagans Motorcycle Club is one of the most relentless and dangerous enemies the Hells Angels have ever faced. Based primarily in the mid-Atlantic states, the Pagans have a reputation for their brutal confrontations with the Hells Angels that date back several decades. What set the Pagans apart was their resilience and sheer defiance. while many clubs bent to the power of the Hells Angels, the pagans stood their ground, willing to fight to the death to maintain their territory. Over the years, the pagans allied themselves with other gangs, such as the Latin Kings and the Bloods, which gave them an added layer of muscle and a wider network of support. This made them not just a local threat, but a force to be reckoned with across multiple states. You can see the man being gunned down at around 3:20 p.m. on May 2nd, 2 men wearing face masks. They had guns drawn and chased the member behind a car. They then shot him in the head. Tensions between the pagans and the Hells Angels escalated quickly. It wasn't just bar brawls or rivalry over territory. It was bloody, full-scale violence. From assassination attempts to street fights that seemed to erupt at any moment, both sides were committed to establishing dominance. One of the most infamous moments came with a series of drive-by shootings where both clubs targeted each other's members. The pagans, unwilling to back down, made it clear they would stop at nothing to carve out their own place in the biker world, even if it meant going toe-to-toe with one of the most feared clubs in the world.
You ever smell old blood? Pulling teeth out of your knuckles, pulling teeth out of your axe handles, pieces of brain.
Their ongoing resistance has made them a permanent fixture on the Hells Angels' radar. The conflict between these two clubs shows no sign of slowing down, particularly on the U.S. East Coast, where their violent feud continues to fuel chaos in the streets. Both clubs continue to fight for supremacy over territories, and the tension between them has only intensified with time. Even as law enforcement increases crackdowns, the pagans have managed to survive and keep pushing back.
Founded in Canada, the Rock Machine Motorcycle Club was a relatively new player in the world of biker gangs when they first appeared in the early 1990s, compared to Hells Angels, who had been operating in Canada since the 1970s.
Then there's the Rock Machine Motorcycle Club, whose clash with the Hells Angels became one of the most infamous biker wars in history. Known as the Quebec Biker War, this conflict started over a seemingly simple dispute about the drug trade, but quickly escalated into a full-blown bloodbath. The violence between the Rock Machine and the Hells Angels wreaked havoc on Quebec, with bombings, assassinations, and public shootings becoming common. The death toll climbed to over 160, leaving the city in chaos. The war took a devastating toll on both sides, but in the end, the Hells Angels emerged victorious, solidifying their dominance over the province.
Started in the early 1990s when the Rock Machine began to challenge the Hells Angels' dominance in Quebec. The Hells Angels responded with violence, and what ensued was a bloody battle that lasted for years.
However, even though the Hells Angels crushed the Rock Machine and its allies, the impact of the war lingered long after the bloodshed ended. The Rock Machine's fierce resistance remains a defining moment in the Hells Angels' history. For a time, the Hells Angels couldn't just expand freely. They had to fight for every inch of ground they took. This was a war fought not just for power, but for survival, and it forever shaped the Hells Angels' legacy in the biker world. The Rock Machine may have been destroyed, but the fierce rivalry they represented will never be forgotten.
A local cop is about to make the biggest bust of his career. His target, the president of the Bandidos, America's largest outlaw motorcycle club.
The Bandidos Motorcycle Club has been one of the most formidable enemies the Hells Angels have ever encountered. Known for their ruthless tactics and an international presence, the Bandidos have been a constant thorn in the eye of the Angels. Their rise to power began in the 1960s, and since then, they've expanded their influence across North America, Australia, and Europe. In each of these regions, the Bandidos have clashed with the Hells Angels, carving out territories and engaging in full-blown warfare over control. It's this aggressive expansion and relentless pursuit of dominance that has made the Bandidos one of the Hells Angels' most dangerous adversaries.
The Bandidos are one of the largest outlaw motorcycle gangs in the world.
He's determined to prove that Weggers is the boss of a nationwide crime syndicate. Jensen set up a wire room in a secret location.
The violence between the two clubs is some of the most brutal seen in outlaw biker history. Ambushes, deadly shootouts, and stabbings have been regular occurrences, each battle escalating the animosity between the two groups. One of the most infamous incidents in their rivalry was the 1998 showdown in Waco, Texas, where a major gunfight broke out during a motorcycle rally. The conflict was so intense that it drew attention from law enforcement and media worldwide. These types of violent altercations, along with a series of drive-by shootings and bombings, have become a clear example of how the Bandidos operate. For years, the Hells Angels had to continuously adapt their strategies in order to combat the growing strength of the Bandidos, who refused to back down or compromise on their territorial ambitions. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to check out our latest video.